I've done a few tests on 12 gauge shotgun slugs, and seeing as I mostly focus on self-defense, personal protection, slugs are usually a bit much. They're a huge bullet, penetrates too far, does a tremendous amount of damage, but not necessarily the most responsible choice for in-home protection. So today, we're going to try some slugs that have been designed to minimize that penetration a bit and maybe even make bigger wounds. So today we're going to have a segmented shotgun slug showdown between two of the competitors that seem to be optimized for personal defense. First up, the Winchester PDX1 segmented slug. Now this is a conventional slug, except that it's designed to break into 3 pieces. So normally with a shotgun, you get your tremendous wounding comes from using buckshot, and you have 8 or 9, or if you're using smaller shot, maybe 15, 16 different wound paths. A slug is usually one big bullet. What the segmented slug claims to do is that it will give you the goodness of both. You'll have one big bullet until it hits the target, at which point it'll break into 3 and create 3 separate wound paths. So where a slug really falls down, if you're doing something like long-range hunting, deer hunting, whatever, 50 yards away, buckshot will spread so far that it's unlikely to do the kind of damage you need necessary to get the job done. But a segmented slug will stay together and fly true until it hits and then split into the 3. So it's an interesting design from that aspect. The other one, the D-Duplex Hexolit 32. This is a very different type. This has a special construction where 6 individual projectiles are supposed to break off and create a number of wound paths. Well, clearly that number will be 6. And then the main slug stays together. So 2 different approaches to the idea of hitting a target hard with a shotgun slug and also creating additional wound paths. Let's go find out if one is better than the other, or, well, how they both do. Okay, now we're going to do 12 gauge PDX1. The PDX1 12 gauge segmented slug, do I even have to discuss it? Do we even have to look at it? It's just outstanding. The utter obliteration of the first half of the gel block. I've got one piece. You can see one piece of the slug that's separated out. You can see where a second one was headed here at the bottom, and a third one exited too soon. The gel block was not big enough to hold all 3 pieces. That one piece that stayed in was about 15 inches deep. So very impressive. All 12 gauges are very impressive. All right, the Hexolit 32, you can see in the initial portion, utter destruction and devastation like we've come to expect from 12 gauge slugs. The final piece, at the end of travel, we didn't get the slug in the block. It was actually laying between the backer block and the regular block. So here's the slug pieces that were recovered, big old chunk of denim there, and just a mangled mess of slug. And this, we're going to count that at about 16.5 inches because that's what it took for it to fall between the 2 blocks. So excellent penetration. You can see that there's individual tracks here. A lot of destruction, but you can see pretty much clearly the individual paths that each little chunk made, and the chunks are nasty. That's a nice, looks like a hunk of a screwdriver or something. You'll show that more in detail in the bullet exam. In our segmenting shotgun slug showdown, I've got the recovered fragments here from the PDX1 segmenting slug up here. I recovered 2 of the 3. There were 3 chunks, but one of them exited the block and I couldn't find it. So there should be a third one here. And then we have the recovered pieces from the Hexolit 32. And let's just start off with the shotgun slug here. This is a big, nasty piece of lead. This is about 140 grains, so think of it as a, the size and weight of a heavy 9mm bullet. 3 of those penetrating deeply, ripping themselves apart, and causing the initial damage cavity of a 12-gauge slug. Fantastic round. The Hexolit, very different. 6 of these fragments, these are about 35 grains apiece, so around the weight of a 22 LR, a lot bigger in size than a 22 LR, and they have this triangular profile. So an interesting piece, but they really didn't penetrate very far. You can't really count on these being able to reach in and hit the vital organs in all cases. However, this monstrosity, this thing, this heavy slug, that went 16 inches. I actually found it between the 2 blocks, 16 inches, and it still weighs 292 grains, 291.8, I think. So that is tremendous. Not exactly the same as a conventional 12-gauge slug, obviously. You had this fragmenting off here, but you still had the deep penetration hitting the target that you initially aimed at. On the other hand, here we had 3 slugs that went deep. Instead of these 6 that only went very shallow and 1 going deep, here you had 3 separate ones that went deep. But none of the 3 are as big as this monster, and these were all separating out into individual wound paths, whereas this stayed pretty much on target and hit what you had aimed at. Okay, wrap up on the segmented shotgun slugs. First thing first, it's really hard to go wrong with a 12-gauge shotgun slug. I don't care what brand, what type, whatever. A 12-gauge shotgun slug is going to be just a devastating, destructive, powerful weapon, no matter which you choose. If you choose like the Brenneke or the Slugger that I've tested before, or one of these segmenting types, either way, it's going to be really effective and really tremendous. The PDX1, I gotta say, did exactly what it said it was going to do, right on the box. A nice hard hit, created a huge temporary cavity, separated into 3 pieces, each of them a big nasty chunk of lead that penetrated very deeply. So you gotta just give it thumbs up. It did exactly what it said it was going to do. The Hexolit is just a very different approach. I mean, you can even see it when you look at the slug, it just looks like nothing else. And it broke off into 6 pieces that didn't really penetrate as deep as I'd like to see. We had 6 to 7.5 inches, which is certainly enough to hurt something, but we love to see a minimum of 12 inches of penetration through gel so that we know that it'll be capable of reaching the vital organs from any angle and through intervening arms. I gotta think that this design, though, would have blasted through an intervening arm, so that probably is not much of an issue. I still would have liked to seen the chunks go 8 inches, 6.5 to 7. I'm not complaining. I bet you they would do a serious number against something soft like lungs or something. You would be really torn up off one of these Hexolits. But the thing the Hexolit did, though, it maintained a gigantic, heavy, nearly 300 grain, big, massive slug on top of that initial fragmenting damage. So that's really, a big piece of slug that went 16 inches, and on top of that, you got 6 individual wound paths that all went 6.5 to 7 inches. That's outstanding. I think this Hexolit 32 would be one of the most devastating things someone could get hit with. So I gotta say, I'm not necessarily going to try to pick a winner because there's no reason to. They're both winners, and a regular slug is a winner. They're all fantastic. Using one of these instead of a regular slug is probably going to reduce your overpenetration worries. Probably going to be safer for in and around the house home defense. Don't miss. Man, if you missed with one of these, then anything in its path is going to be very, very much in peril. But both of them, fantastic performers. Very pleased with both of them. So, if you like what you saw, please hit the like button. Hit the subscribe button. You'll be notified when the next video is posted. Thanks for watching.